Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of the Prog Report Top 5 podcast. As you can see, we have some amazing guests here. One with a mask covered, Mr. Mike Portnoy and Neal Morse, Geoff Bailie.
Hey, Roy, did you call me Mark Portnoy? Mark Portnoy. All right, I got to take this.
Well, Beatles mask. On display is the Beatles mask.
There you go. That's pretty great.
I told Mike, I was asking my wife to look for a Beatles shirt. She couldn't find one. I said, come on, man. I got to have something on. Mike's going to be rigged up.
We all have our Beatles paraphernalia somewhere. And Mike's the king of that. Yeah. But anyway, we thought that it would be a great time to do a Beatles top 5. We've been trying to do something like this for a long time. We're all humongous Beatles fans. And every prog fan loves the Beatles in some form or another. So why not? We all have some downtime, staying home, keeping away from the coronavirus. So seemed like a good time. But first, before we do that, let's touch base on all the stuff you guys have going on. No two artists have been busier on this planet during this period than the two of you guys. I mean, it's pretty crazy. You had the cover to cover that just came out, the new one, version 3, and then the anthology, which is out now, so everybody can get that, which is great. Neal, you have Sola Gratia or Sola Gratia coming out
September 11th.
September 11th, sorry. And coming out this Friday on the Waterfall app, August 28th. And then you have the Flying Colors live release that's coming out, I think, September 18th.
Right.
And Morsefest is coming up.
And we're still working on Transatlantic, too.
Transatlantic is in the works. And then, Mike, you are on John Petrucci's new record, and you're putting out a ton of stuff online. So let's just find out a little bit about what's going on before we jump into the top 5. First thing I want to ask, Neal, just let's talk about the new record. Okay. Inspiration behind it, writing it. Was it because of all this downtime that you sort of pursued it now? Did that play into it at all?
Well, I had started it. It started in my mind in January because one of my motivations was I had talked to Mike right around that time, or maybe even earlier. Mike will remember. He'll remember the exact date that we spoke. But we had been talking about what we could do for Morsefest, and it was looking very certainly like it wasn't going to be Transatlantic, which is what we had hoped, but it wasn't going to work out. And this is before COVID or any of that. And so I started thinking, well, what can we do? We were talking about different things. And then I was on this vacation in Australia and New Zealand, and I started to get inspired and started writing this, getting a lot of musical ideas. And also I remembered that several people had mentioned that I might want to do an epic concept album about the Apostle Paul. So I started to get inspired when I was down there in New Zealand, particularly, and came home and started putting it together. And that's when COVID really hit, in the middle of writing it. But somehow, in spite of all that, I was thinking that maybe Mike was going to be able to fly here, But it was the first album that we've done virtually. I sent him the stuff, and I sent the stuff to Randy in April. And then Rich started mixing in May, and now the record's coming out September 11th.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's great. I missed having everybody together, though. I missed you. I really
First time. I mean, of all, Neal and I have done 20 something albums together, studio albums, and this is the first time we recorded separately. First time ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but
it's kind of weird. But yeah, it came out really good, and that was my, of course, that's the main concern. It's like, and it was different. I haven't just made all the decisions in a long time. You get used to like really leaning on people, and so I was just like, is this good enough? No, I don't think it is. Cut. Put in another thing. And like, is that better? Yes, I think so. Yes. Okay, let's go. It was quite a challenge, but it was
but
good.
It must have also been a nice relief to not have to sell and pitch everything and dispute and argue. We don't. Right. It's not arguing, but it's creative you know, back and forth. It must have been nice to not have that for the first time in a long time too.
When does that ever happen?
Yeah. I mean, I just woke up to you know, a million emails with it happening, you know, it happens with everything.
It still goes on, you know,
Yeah.
you can go on about everything, you know, about the artwork and everything. You know?
Yeah.
But,
Well, there's a fun question then. What do you think would have been different about the album had it been done in the traditional way?
That is a good question.
man, I don't know. I actually threw it out there. I wanted to like try to have a Zoom meeting with Mike and Randy, you know, because it was really me and Mike and Randy that did a lot of the shaping on my earlier concept albums. And so I was kind of trying to do that virtually, but they both just said, no, I think it's great. I'll just play to it. It's awesome. So, you know.
They were, I mean, in all fairness, some of those earlier solo albums of yours, you know, we worked together on a lot. Like one, we reshaped, did a lot of reshaping. But then there was other albums like, you know, Sola or whatever, question mark. There was a lot of that where that was just you and Randy and I were like, hey, it's great. Let's just do it. I think, you know, we would throw in our 2 cents here and there because we were in the room together. I think if we were doing this album at your place, we inevitably would have probably talked about some stuff. But given the nature of this, with all doing it remotely because of the lockdown, it was like you sent your demos with you playing everything, and everything you played was great. Even your drums were great, and you even kept one of them. But there was
You're very kind.
But it was like, this is great. Let's just go for it. There's no need for us to force input if it's not needed, you know?
Yeah. I do have one more question about it, Mike. From your perspective, always, you know, listening to these ideas and demos as they come from album to album, you know, from Neal, and you hear a song like, for me, it's Overflow, which I think is just amazing and seemingly sincere, obviously, which is tremendous. When you hear demos like that and songs like that come in, do you ever have just like, man, he another one, like, just like, how does he keep turning this stuff out?
Yeah, I mean, I've been having that sensation for over 20 years now. Yeah, absolutely. I'm Neal's biggest fan. Well, maybe tied with you guys, perhaps, but I'm definitely up there with you guys. You know, so aside from working together and writing together and playing together and collaborating together, when I hear Neal's demos, I mean, Neal will send in like oh yeah, he's like, I just woke up with this idea, and then he'll send it, and it's a 45 minutes epic song, you know, that he just wrote, you know, in his sleep. So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, actually,
nature.
When we're airing this, actually, it will be available on the Waterfall app by the time this airs, and then right. So what's the domain, Geoff, for that?
Waterfall Stream. It's
waterfallstreaming.com.
Waterfallstreaming.com. And then again, officially out on everywhere else, September 11th. So you can get that. Mike, I want to jump in and ask you real quick, for everybody that's been under a rock that doesn't know, you are on John Petrucci's new solo record, Terminal Velocity, which will also be out Friday, August 28th, out by now on all streaming and physical on October 30th. Real quick, I mean, just what was it like working on that and recording that and everything that's come with that? I mean, it's pretty cool for everybody to see.
Yeah, it was, well, for starters, when John called me and asked me if I would do it, it was a real honor. It was real exciting to think about us doing something together again. And so, yeah, first of all, I was honored and flattered. And then, you know, once we got to it, it was an amazing experience, you know, musically and personally. You know, it was great to be reconnecting with him. You know, our history goes back to when we were teenagers, you know, and you know, we spent 25 years together, joined at the hip. So you know, it's almost weirder to not have been doing that for the past 10 years. Yeah. So unlike Neal's latest solo album, we didn't do my drums remotely for John's album. I actually went to Long Island and spent the week with him, recording and hanging, and you know, so it was great in that respect as well. You know, it wasn't like some sort of quarantine album. You know, it was great that I went there and we spent the week together. not only going through the music and the parts, but also hanging and, living together for a week. So it was great to have that as well. So, but what can I say? I mean, it's an amazing album. I think John should be really, really proud of what he wrote and played. His playing is phenomenal. And I got to do my thing. And, it's just a monumental album for both of us, really, on a personal level, just because, of our history together. And it was just nice to finally reconnect and make some music together.
Yeah, for sure. It's pretty great. Everybody definitely check that out. So, I mean, look at the amount of music that's coming out, and you got the Flying Colours live in London. That's September 18th. What can we say about that people need to know? I mean, there's some live footage already online, some videos. It looks amazing, sounds amazing, and it has Morsefest from last year on there too, which people can watch.
I actually just got the product, the Flying Colours live product, a few days ago, and Mascot asked me to do like an unboxing of the. It's right here.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
this
cool.
is the yearbook.
Nice.
Yearbook, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just did a whole unboxing video. So, and I actually went into my home theater and watched the Blu-ray and everything. It was great. So, yeah, it's a great package. People are gonna love it, and. Pretty much like every time, all the Flying Colours tours, we're only able to hit like, a dozen markets. So this is a chance for people that didn't get to see it live to actually experience the whole thing. And we thought we'd have one more show after that, but we were supposed to play in Cruise to the Edge for the last show.
Right.
But
Right.
As of now, the London show ended up being it. So that's the last Flying Colours show until who knows when. And on there's the bonus footage from the Morsefest appearance. So you're kind of getting the first show of the tour and the last show of the tour both on the package. And it's really great.
I mean, it's impossible to know, obviously, for many reasons, but if things were sort of normal and without what's going on in the world and different cycles and stuff, I mean, could you see where there would be a fourth album sometime in the future? Is the band still something that would be hopefully a thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an ongoing band, it's just kind of part-time,
right,
because of all of our schedules. But yeah, we absolutely hope to do more, for sure.
Love it. Yeah, man, that band's awesome. It's great.
And there's great chemistry. It's just all great guys. We all get along, and it's a good time. It's good vibes, So yeah, I think we all would love to continue as long as we can.
Yeah, I had even mentioned the possibility, since because of COVID, Steve doesn't have a zillion gigs.
Right.
The possibility of just getting together to write, even though it seems, it'd be kind of soon for us, but if you have the opportunity,
It just came to me like the fourth album. It could have been COVID and then the I and the V. But it's too bad it's not our sixth album, because if it was our sixth album, it would be CO and then VI in a different color and then D. But well, I don't know. We might be in lockdown till our sixth album at this point anyway.
There might be enough time.
Yeah, it could be.
Mike Portnoy, ladies and gentlemen. That was essential.
That's great.
Well, actually, because this moving swiftly to Morsefest, which is the 6th Morsefest, isn't it?
Oh wow!
We missed that trick for that.
Totally.
I called it Morsefest 2020. Anyway, it is, isn't it? 14.
Yeah,
15, 16, 17, 18, 19. No, it's 7th actually. 7th. Oh well. Anyway, Morsefest is a matter of weeks away.
Yes.
You've got the Covers Night coming up. How are things set for that?
Oh, really, really exciting. I can't wait to play. I just can't wait to play anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's going to be really fun the more I dive into this stuff.
I've been pushing to do a Covers Night at Morsefest for years. I always push for it every time. Like it's time to start talking about what you're going to do. I've been pushing for it for years. So kind of doing the cover to cover album, and then because of the situation that we're in, it lent itself perfectly to finally having a Covers Night.
You did a voting thing online for fans to pick which songs. That turned out pretty well from what I hear, but were you surprised by some of the choices? Was it different than maybe what you thought?
Well, don't disclose.
Yeah, don't spill the beans.
But I will say the one that came in number one, I kind of expected it, and it was a clear runaway, like by far, unanimous, first choice for the fans. But I don't know, Neal, did you like the fan vote?
Oh yeah, sure. I wasn't particularly surprised by it. I don't think there was anything on there that I was like, oh, whoa. No, it was about what I expected, from the progressive rock community.
Right. Okay. There's a clue. And how are people still able to, I guess it's going to be online and streaming for people that can't make it. So is that still available and people can still purchase to do that?
Yeah. Everything's still available. Even in person, if people feel brave enough to come, we've got a big space. We can social distance. We'll have masks and all that stuff. So come on, be a part.
Right. Hey, it's an opportunity if you're nearby. So that's all available on radiantrecords.com, nealmorse.com.
Yeah, we actually have special Morsefest masks.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
There you go.
So there you go.
So a lot going on, and then I guess you guys will get a much deserved break after all of this stuff. I hope.
Yeah. Right.
And so, but let's go ahead and dive into this. Normally we play clips. We've never done it on video at Top 5, so this will be interesting. But normally we put in some music clips and stuff. We're gonna skip the clips for this, mostly because I don't want to get sued by the Beatles, and everybody knows all the songs anyway. So
use yellow matter, Custer.
Yeah. But I want to point out, like, Geoff's got the Pepper background and Roy's got the Abbey Road background, but I'm noticing they changed the license plate on the Volkswagen.
Well, this is not the official. Yeah. If you see, it's not with them there. It's sort of a recreation.
But did they put a Volkswagen there? But they have the wrong license plate. It's supposed to be 28F.
F.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
did you notice when me and Geoff Scott Soto and Bumblefoot did that version of Because and we recreated the cover, we changed the license plate to 59 if I think it was.
I didn't.
Because it's 79 if, because it's 50 years later. Well, I don't know. I don't remember. But the whole thing was it was 50 years later, so we changed the license plate to match the modern cover. But anyhow, I digest.
Wow. So all right, so look,
like Portnoy.
Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll give Mike. Why don't you go with your number 5 pick? We'll start with you.
Well, I have to start by saying this is an impossible exercise. This is absolutely impossible. This list that I'm going to give today is today's list. We did this tomorrow, it would be a different list. I mean, it's absolutely impossible to not only pick 5, but then to put them in an order. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah, so many good songs, so many.
But I have something here which represents today, and looking at it, I'm shocked to see how weighted it is in one particular Beatles. It really, this whole list is almost one guy's list. Huh. So I guess we can get into looking at what the final results are like a little further down in the conversation. But I'll start by saying it was impossible. But here it is. Okay, so my number 5 is In My Life by John Lennon. I wanted to go with something mid-period. I mean, I love the Rubber Soul album. I could have picked anything off of Rubber Soul, and there's so many great choices. But for some reason, In My Life was the first time that John showed that introspective kind of poetic side, and it was coming out on Rubber Soul. He also had Girl, but then again, he had Run for Your Life as well. So who the hell knows? But right. But he had In My Life and Run for Your Life on the same album. But In My Life to me was always just such a beautiful song. It was actually one of the songs played at mine and Marlene's in our wedding video. And I love the drumming. I love Ringo's groove there and the harpsichord flavors from George Martin. So, that's one of 50 songs I could have picked, but that just happens to be my number 5 at this moment.
Yeah, great song, and
Oh yeah.
it could be on any number of lists. It's an all-time classic.
Can I comment?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I think are amusing about what you just said. One of them is Lennon had such a darkness to him, and that's one of the things it sounds weird to say, but that really adds such an interesting flavor to the song. Like you mentioned the song Girl, the last verse is so creepy. Will she understand it when he's dead? You're like, like, oh God. And then run for your life because you're going to be dead. I'm going to kill you, and then In My Life is so nice. But, as a married man for many years, it strikes me as amusing. I always say we were listening to that recently, I think with my daughter. And it was like, but of all the lovers he's had, he likes you best.
Right.
But of all these lovers, if you listen to the music, they're very honest.
Earlier,
the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. Like I've got so many.
Yeah, and this was also the same album where he wrote Norwegian Wood, which is about an affair he had with So yeah, but I love that dichotomy of John. I mean, you listen to like the Plastic Ono Band or the Imagine albums, you have stuff like Mother and Love, Oh My Love for the First Time, and then you have like Give Me Some Truth and How Do You Sleep, and then and God, God is a concept by which we measure our pain. So he could be so jaded and cynical and dark, but he could also he's the same guy that wrote Give Peace a Chance and Imagine, Yeah.
Right, sure.
And one thing about the Girl, I didn't realize this till recently. He wrote Girl, in his 20s. And then on his last album, Double Fantasy, he wrote Woman, it's pretty amazing that, think about his songs, Girl, Woman, Love, Mother, God, he just covered it all, really.
Yeah. But what a thing, and speaking of that song, Girl, I mean, if somebody came to you and said, okay, here's the chorus of this song. Girl, girl. What is that?
And yet we all sing along exactly the way it is in the car.
Well, it's really all about the melody of the verse for me. Yeah. You were told when she was young the pain would lead to pleasure. Yeah.
How are we talking about Girl, though? The song choice was In My Life.
I don't know, but this is what's going to happen.
Maybe Girl is on his list.
Oh, that's such a great song. And you're right, absolutely right about the George Martin bringing in the classical element. That harpsichord solo is just so great.
All right, so 45 minutes later, where we've talked about In My Life.
One song from one guy.
Neil, what's your number 5?
Well, I decided to go by categories because I couldn't, and I wanted to go for things that were maybe a little more unusual, not all just the hits and things. There's something that I don't think people usually talk about, which is the early dumb songs, like the dumb ones, Oh yeah, those sort of love, but the ones like
the head boppers,
bop tops,
and I love those songs. There I was like 4 years old. Those are some of my favorite songs when I was a little kid, and so I decided to go with my first category is the early dumb songs, and I chose Thank You Girl.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good song. Yeah.
That's a great one, right? Because you got the harmonica opening, and then here's another thought. You're the producer, and the guys come in. Hey, we got this new song. Here's the start of it. Dun, 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 and then just go, ow, ow. I can't even do it with a straight face. Ow, you. That's how it starts. I mean, I don't know. I love it, and it's got the nice, 2-part harmonies, but that's one of the ones that always just makes me feel good. And I really like the early. There's a lot of early, kind of silly song, Mr. Moonlight, and but I just love those songs.
Great. No, that's a great way to go.
I love that there's a whole dumb song category for
Yeah.
you. and it never lets out, even when they're going into the more psychedelic stuff. You look at the White Album, half of the White Album is, Honey Pie, Wild Honey Pie, Obla Di Obla Da. I mean, there's no shortage of kind of silly love songs, but there's no shortage of them. Or you even like, Let It Be is filled with, Dig It and Maggie May, and so they always had them on every album.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of silly songs, and
I mean they
made it fun.
They were one of a handful of bands that maybe they were the ones that led this, but they had no boundaries and they didn't care what any particular album had. They would throw in Octopus's Garden on Abbey Road or whatever. It just didn't matter. All right, so Geoff, you're number 5.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit out of place in this photo, so I'm just gonna get.
Oh, there you go. Nice
get
timing.
ready.
Very good.
Wow,
Wow.
There we go. And
wardrobe.
so we just.
Oh wow!
I think really to do this, we need the full works. Okay.
Oh my God.
We're Beatle Geoff is
Bravo,
ready.
Man. That's awesome.
And I'm glad my Wi-Fi stood up to do that. I'm going to start with album 1, track 1. I saw her standing there, and I suppose thinking about it, these guys started off their career, playing rock and roll standards, and at 19, which is what they were when they wrote that song, they wrote a song that is one of those standards today, which is just amazing when you think about that, particularly in a world where bands and singers didn't really write their own songs at that time. And these are two guys in the front room of McCartney's house, as I understand. One's left-handed, one's right-handed. They're sitting like a mirror image of each other, and they come up with with this brilliant song that's just a classic. And they tell the story of it that McCartney had written, I think she was just 17, never been a beauty queen, and Lennon went, "Oh, I don't like that. What can we make it? She was just 17. You know what I mean? Well, what does it mean? But everybody knew what it meant." and then they did to make it, they put the count in at the start to make it sound live. I'm sure Mike probably knows this, but the count-in's from a different take than the actual track.
Oh, I didn't know
so
that.
The take that they used is the very, very first take that they did, but the count-in's like from take 8 or something like that. So I thought, and it's also the last song that John Lennon played live. When he went on stage with Elton in like 1974 or something like that.
That's an amazing bit of trivia right there.
Yeah. So I think what a classic song. So.
It's funny for you. That's the first song in the first album, but we as Americans, our first album was Meet the Beatles, which was a variation of With the Beatles, which was their second album. So our first song was I Want to Hold Your Hand, and I Saw Her Standing There was the second song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for a lot of us too, With the Beatles was the chronology is different for so many people through the world, but it's kind of been rewritten now in the digital age. I think the UK versions are now the ultimate ones that everyone refers to.
Yeah,
that's what people say. But I recently, because I did that. I went, I thought, later on, of course, I grew up on all the American versions, of course. And then I got like the Japanese set or something. It's supposed to be the most pristine vinyl. This was in the 80s, I think. And, I recently bought like the original American Beatles second album. And I think I like it better. I don't think it's just nostalgia.
Well, it has all those versions have the singles. Like we grew up with second album, Something New, Beatles 65, Beatles 6, Yesterday and Today, Hey Jude. And those have all the singles. So that's where you're going to get like Paperback Writer and We Can Work It Out mixed in, the those are the versions that we grew up with in the 60s and 70s until CDs came out.
Yeah,
I can't imagine a record company back then, or today rather, being like, yeah, Hey Jude, just leave it off an album. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry
Well,
about
see what it was. Albums,
Strawberry Fields,
and
Penny Lane, and
yeah.
But albums didn't. Albums. My understanding about the UK was that albums didn't sell as anywhere near as much as singles, and so that was why they sort of put all the best stuff in singles and kind of most other things on albums.
One more thought on Geoff's pick. You mentioned the count off. You drop the needle and there's the 1, 2, 3, 4 count off, and then I guess 5 or 6 albums later with Revolver, it's like, okay, suddenly now this is the new Beatles, and then you hear the beginning of Taxman 1, 2 with all the sound effects and the warbling and everything. It's like kind of like taking the way the first album began, and then here we are now entering the psychedelic age at 66, and okay, this is our count off. It's interesting.
Can you see my notes?
Oh, it did. Oh, it's in. Okay.
Well, also ironically, your get up and picking that song, which was,
Well, I had to bring it in at some point. I'm going to take this off.
All right, I'll jump in with. I thought you were going to leave it on.
Go ahead.
Okay,
all right, I'll jump in with my number 5, and I'm also my normal listening of the Beatles is always the last few records. That's really my favorite stuff. I like the early stuff, but not nearly as much as once you start with Revolver on. But one particular song, and I wanted to give a nod to the early records, and oddly enough, it's really strange for me to pick this song, but one of my all-time favorites is She Loves You, from 63. I just think it's so unique. I mean, it's a silly pop song, but the chord structures, in the harmonies, and just that last note and the ending, and the weird harmony thing that they do when it closes out, it's so original still, even in a dumb pop song like that. And it gets me every time. It's like goosebumps when you hear that odd note. I can't imagine how they thought of that and put it together. And the twist on, I guess their hits prior to that were all personal love songs, and this was one that they were writing from the first time of like looking at other people and sort of switching it around, which was original back then for a song. And just an amazing song. I think maybe their second number 1 in the States, if I'm right. But yeah, just that's one that always sticks out for me when I listen to, among all the later records. I just always really like that.
Yeah, that's great.
It gets reprised at the end of All You Need Is Love as well.
Yes. Yeah. When he sings that bit in, yeah. Another cool little thing.
In Geoff Emmerich's book, The Engineer, I don't know if you've read his book,
No, I
Here,
haven't.
There, and Everywhere. But he talks about they cut that song the day that Abbey Road Studios was overrun by young girls. Like they found out the Beatles were going to be in the studio. They didn't have any security or anything. And so like all the engineers in their, white shirts and ties had to try to get all these girls out. It was just a real high energy day. He thinks that added to the energy of that track.
When I think of that, I'm sorry, Neil.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I don't think that goes under the dumb category because it's just so good, and it's and that minor 4 chord, the because she loves you and it can't be bad, 6 minor, because she loves you, right. 4 minor. Very inventive. You should be glad to the 5 major. That's just really very inventive stuff.
Yeah, for sure, and that's what sticks out. It's just so original in the way they were able to write in that little 2.5 minutes. It's really cool.
Yeah, think about 1963. Most bands were all doing 1-4-5s, and it was pretty stock blues, 12-bar blues stuff, and I think those early albums, you were hearing Lennon and McCartney, in writing with different chord progressions and inversions and things and harmonies that had never ever happened up until that point. Yeah. They were pretty much rewriting the rule books of songwriting at that point.
Yeah,
and not because they were massively trained musicians, just because you get the feeling that it's like, oh, look, when you put the wrong finger somewhere in a chord and they go, oh, well, where can we use that? They didn't know that it was I don't think they knew that it was kind of all the technical names for it. They just found stuff that sounded good, and then they did the same in production, which was there was no book. They just went and did stuff, and if it sounded good, they used it. Just brilliant.
Well, I'm sure, like during their time in Hamburg, they were learning all kinds of different kinds of songs. If you're learning, some of the early Motown stuff, and you're learning, some of these show tunes and things. I figured that they were picking up, just like everybody does. You're picking up like little ideas and things. Oh, you could go here, from all the. I mean, because they were more than just rhythm and blues. Yeah. At that, even in Hamburg, I think they were doing, some stuff that was, had some interesting, chordal structures.
They were into skiffle. What is skiffle? They were really into the whole skiffle.
Skiffle is a acoustic music really with people playing washboards and it was my dad. My dad was big into skiffle.
Hey, there's the
Neil's met my dad. He knows what my dad's like.
All right, let's jump back. Mike, you're number 4.
Once again, this is an impossible thing, but I'm going with another John song for my number 4, and it's the Tender John again. Dear Prudence. I think it's just such a beautifully written song. Second song on the White Album. Paul on drums on this one, and I love the drumming in that third verse with all the tom fills.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing, and it's Paul. But yeah, I just love this song. It was one of the ones that was written in India when they were there, and I think it was written for Mia Farrow's sister. But it's just so beautiful, and what more can I say? I love it.
The bass playing on that song to me is as good as he ever did.
The second verse,
it's just so cool.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, that is them almost doing like a prog song, really. I mean, the different parts in that song and the guitar lick that George is doing, and it's just awesome. One of my favorites.
It's an interesting idea to fade it in and fade it out also, kind of drifts in, and then I love the way they hit that chord and they put the echo plucks all over it. Won't you come out to play, ding, which is the solo guitar, and it just kind of fades out. It's totally cool. It reminds me of John's famous saying, like, do you think Ringo's the best drummer in the world? I don't even think he's the best drummer in the Beatles.
I think that's an apocryphal one, but Mike, as a drummer, Ringo's obviously a big one of your influences, but there is this thing about, Ringo's not a very good drummer. What's the comment to that from a drummer?
No. I mean, I can go on all day about Ringo. First of all, there's so many levels to why he was so great and so important. First of all, he was such an important character. Yeah, up until that point, there was never a drummer that had gotten like the spotlight like he did. The Beatles came out, and it was like 4 Elvises, and suddenly now the drummer was just as known or popular as any of the guys in the band. But that aside, his drumming, I mean, it's so tasty, and it's not necessarily what he played, it's what he didn't play. Like, I mentioned In My Life earlier, that drum pop, or Ticket to Ride, or Penny Lane. I mean, this minimal drumming, but it was so perfect. But he played with power. You just mentioned She Loves You. I remember seeing the footage of them playing like on their first U.S. tour at like Washington, D.C. with the riser spinning around, and that riser is shaking. He's really rocking out. And then there's songs like She's a Woman, where he's doing he's got that shuffle going with his right hand. Yeah. So I give him a lot of credit. And then also he's a lefty drummer. So a lot of his he was a lefty drummer playing a righty kit. So a lot of his fills were sticked backwards, which was very unique. So when you listen to like the fills and like A Day in the Life or some of the stuff on Abbey Road, I mean, it was just very unique and tasty. But the fact of the matter is, he was the first guy that was doing any of this stuff. No other drummers had this kind of personality in their drumming up until that point. So I give him all the credit in the world for not only being one of the most influential drummers, but being technically a great drummer. He really is. He was, for those times, nobody played drums like that. And then sure enough, then came the Keith Moons and the Ginger Bakers and the Mitch Mitchells. But Ringo was really the first drum star in rock. You know, you had Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa before that. But in terms of rock and roll, Ringo was the first drum hero.
Well, and he had songwriting influence on the songs. His drums are parts. They weren't just in the background. They're significant to how you remember the song. And that was rare for what someone could do. So I think he's amazing. Yeah. Neal, you're number 4.
Ooh, my number 4.
What category is this one?
Well, this category is going. You got to go for early pop. You know, and there's some, again, like Mike said, it's impossible. There's some. I mean, I was on that cruise in Australia, and they had the Australian Beatles for one of the shows, and they did. And I realized they did a whole hour show with everybody singing along, and they only went up to like 1965. You know, I mean, there's so many great early songs, but I had to go with 8 Days a Week. I was looking for one that had the killer bridge. You know, they have that period in their early pop where they're just, the middle eights are just so great. And the songs are great too, but I just love those 2-part vocal middle eights that Mike and I have talked about a lot of different times. Like,
totally.
I'm a Loser has a great one.
No Reply.
No Reply, Babies in Black, all these different ones. The middle eights with the 2-part.
Oh, this boy, the middle eight of This Boy.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh,
but I particularly like the middle eights where they do these interesting harmony splits. You know, they'll go from a third to a fourth to a fifth, and you know, it's that's what I really loved about their harmonies thing, and I love the way that works out in the bridge, particularly of 8 Days a Week. But that's one that I think just has great energy, and it's kind of a quintessential Beatles song. Yeah,
I love the opening, and McCartney was opening his shows a couple years back with that. He stuck that in as the opening song, which is a great way to kick it off. Nice, good choice. All right, Geoff, you're 4.
Okay, number 4, back to John, and yeah, I've chosen Help. So much you could say about it, but a song where, you know, it's a song of desperation, and I think he originally wrote it as a slow song, but they said no, you speed it up. So you've got this great kind of poppy beat with someone saying, you know, help, you know, I need somebody, not just anybody, you know, a cry, you know, a real cry for help, probably from them at the time where they were at this incredible, unprecedented level of attention and all that kind of stuff that probably hadn't happened for music stars before, and these were still relatively young guys. And there's so much love about it. There's actually no bridge in this one. There's no turnaround, there's no middle eight, there's no anything like that. It's just, you know, chorus at the end. And the other thing that when I was listening through songs and thinking of, you know, quirky things, it's very unusual for the backing vocal line to come before the main line. And there's that little thing, you know.
I love that.
You know, when
now,
you need it.
these days are gone.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I go, you know, you would, you know, it'd be amazing to be a fly on the wall to decide, you know, how did that come about, or how did they do that? But again, just this amazing creativity. Yeah, so a melancholy lyric that actually ended up being a real hit single, and yeah, the title.
Which movie do you guys like better, Help or Hard Day's Night?
Hard Day's Night for me.
Help for me. I actually I just rewatched Help a month or two ago, and I realized me and Melody watched it, and it was like the first 4 songs were all John. This is John's prime, I think, because the first song in the movie was Help, then came You Got to Hide Your Love Away, You're Gonna Lose That Girl, Ticket to Ride. I mean, John was firing on all cylinders during that period, and it wasn't until George had I Need You and Paul had The Night Before, but up until like The Night Before in the movie, it was the John show. It was song after song after song were John's, and he was just really in his prime in that period.
Yeah,
read
around that period, that's when he became my favorite Beatle. I was a Paul guy early on. You know, when you're kids, you know, you choose sides. I remember at school, we would have fights with groups of people like, this is in America. Like, who was better, the Beatles or the Stones?
Right.
You know, like, I was thinking about that. How weird is that in American schools? People would be having these fights.
They still do.
Is that right?
Yeah, oh, the Beatles and Stones is still a giant, battle between the two of them. You know, the fans. You're a Stones guy or you're a Beatles guy.
Yeah, it is. That there's a divide for some reason, which is between those two bands.
So anyway, I was a Paul guy, but around the Help period, man, I was fully John.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'll jump in. So my number 4, yeah, I'm gonna jump a lot. 67, Sgt. Pepper. I'm gonna go with the title track, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which, you know, kudos Geoff on the garb. Yeah, I just love the riff, love the horn section, the breakdown, the whole thing. It's just
the three-part harmony on that is so great.
It's so original. The whole concept. I mean, can't even forget about that. But they just took such a leap going into the album, and it's just a tremendous way to kick off that album. But Geoff and I were talking before we started this. I mean, that's just one song that I felt like choosing for this list that I just really like that riff, and it's memorable to me. But I could have picked, you know, Lovely Rita from this album and put it in my top 5. I mean, it's just any song could have been in my top 5 from this album.
Except Within You and Without You.
Yeah, you're probably right. That is a skipper for me, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah,
but
I love the love version of that, where it combines Within Without You and Tomorrow Never Knows. That version is actually really, really cool.
Yeah. Actually, the love, the whole thing is just really cool way to listen to it. I like the at the end of Love, when they go from where they extend the little bit of Hey Jude, and they bridge it with the reprise of Sgt. Pepper. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it has the na-na-nas going, and then it's like going, and then suddenly the drums come in for the
drums
Sgt. Pepper reprise.
Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, and I actually wish I wish when Paul tours, I just feel like it'd be the coolest thing to open the show with this song.
I think he has.
I don't think so. He always plays the reprise and the encore, which is great. But how cool would it be to just come out and just play this first? I just think it'd be so cool.
I could be wrong, but I think he had on one tour. I recall him opening with it, but
I believe it was November 8th.
Well, Mike, I won't argue with you. You're probably right, but I just think that would be great. All right, so moving on. Mike, back to you. You're number 3.
Oh, it's another John. And
wow,
I already had a John from the White Album. It's another White Album John. Happiness is a Warm Gun. You know, the Beatles did a lot of firsts, and I think this might be considered one of the first kind of prog songs as well. You had like little bits and pieces that made the song up. A lot of odd time signatures in this one, and it's always been a favorite of mine. You know, once again, it's cynical, John, but I just loved that it was so different. It was very, very, and you know, the White Album has a lot of firsts. You know, Helter Skelter could be looked at as like one of the first heavy metal songs, but I think Happiness is a Warm Gun in a lot of ways was a little bit of a more progressive song for them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you know, and what moments in that song. What that chord and the tones of the guitar, and you know, when it comes in the and he's in a velvet hand like a lizard on a window pane, you know, it's, boy, everything's so cutting, you know, it's like I love the way I think some of the best mixes are the White Album.
Yeah,
you know, the tone of the snare drum, you know, everything's so clear and, you know, just cutting through the speakers, man.
It seems like such a long period that by the time they got to the White Album, but it's 5 years from She Loves You to the White Album, which is insane.
Yeah, totally. Incredible. Hey, we never did Happiness is a Warm Gun with Yellow Matter Custard. So I originally never put it on the set list because maybe people don't know this, but Dream Theater covered Happiness is a Warm Gun with Steve Hogarth from Marillion joining us. And we never released it, but we did it at that Uncovered Ronnie Scott show in '95.
Oh, wow.
But we never released it. So if we ever do another Yellow Matter Custard, I really want to get Happiness is a Warm Gun into the set list for sure.
I'm in.
Good, do it.
Oh, hey,
Awesome.
Roy, I wanted to say something about the Sgt. Pepper album. Has anybody ever noticed, or has it been ever talked about, how many one-note melodies there are on that album? I mean,
Well,
I was wondering.
Lucy, the first verse of Lucy is pretty much, right?
Yeah, cellophane flowers of yellow and green. You know, it was 20 years ago today. And even it's wonderful to be here. It's certainly a thrill. You're such a lovely audience. It's so many one-note melodies. Like,
no, I never noticed that, but yeah, they're totally right.
I mean, they totally work. It's great, but I don't know. I think about that sometimes when I'm writing. Like, you know, it's okay just to, you don't have to move around a lot.
Right.
It's the right lyric. You know, one of the things is like about Sgt. Pepper's. I mean, just the lyric is so merry. You know, it was 20 years ago today. It just Sgt. Pepper taught the band, the way it just rolls off, man. It's absolute magic.
Well, Neal, you're up, number 3.
Oh, number 3, this might be kind of a surprise. I wanted to choose a Paul, and I wanted to choose a mid-era Paul. And I love, and I think one of the best vocals he did too, is on The Night Before.
Oh, I love that song, and it almost made my list, so that's great, yeah.
Yeah, that bridge, the minor 5 bridge, you know, it makes me wanna cry. It's like, what a vocal. And then George sounds so great on the back of the
Yellow Matter Custard version is my name is George. My name is George.
I always had I have this fantasy that George is always like saying his name and, you know, singing in the third person in songs. And so it's a fun thing to sort of throw in.
That song I always thought was weird because the opening first few seconds, it sort of sounds like one thing, and then when Paul starts singing, it almost becomes completely different, and the melody that he's singing is so great. It just changes the song completely right there.
Well, even if think about it, it's like a pretty rocking song.
Yeah.
And then the bridge is like kind of like a bossa nova. Last night is the night I will remember. You know, it's very, very goes through a lot of
great pick.
things.
Yeah, that's a great song. Love that one.
Every time I hear that song, I always think to myself, man, I wish I could sing like that. Right from the beginning, we said our goodbyes. Yeah, what a killer vocal.
It's a great singer. Geoff, you're 3.
Okay, my 3 needs the mustache on because it's won by this guy here. Got to get a George song in, and Mike has already referred to the 1, 2, 3, 4 kickoff to Taxman at the start of Revolver. Love the Revolver album. What can I say about this? Well, first thing I've written down is, could you imagine today if Neal Morse or Mike Portnoy put out an album where the first track was them complaining about how much tax they had to pay? You know, could you imagine the music press? You know, it would just be incredible. But the Beatles did, and again, it was a year of very punitive taxes, and as an accountant, you know, that kind of resonates with me. So, and you know, again, we were talking about the different styles. You know, it's a total James Brown, you know, Motown vibe. You know, what the drums and bass are doing, that's totally tight. It's soul music, you know, and it's got a guitar solo. And again, the guitar player, lead guitarist of the Beatles, writes a song and he lets the other guy play the guitar solo on it, you know, because it's McCartney who plays that solo. And it's like, it's got that big octave jump in it, and it's got all the Indian influence, and what they did was, McCartney did that in one take, and then he tried something for the solo at the end, and they couldn't get anything better, so they just copied it and stuck it on the end.
Yeah, the original version doesn't go reprise the guitar solo.
Yeah. So I just think it's an absolutely fantastic song, a brilliant song to start an album, and George, making his mark.
Well, I think it's great in that
as opposed to being hidden away,
where they could have had. I mean, I'm sure there was egos, but for them to let him open the album with that song is pretty remarkable, really.
And it was the first album with 3 George songs. He had Taxman, what is it, Love You Too, and I Want to Tell You. So he got three songs on the album and opened the album.
Yeah.
I only have one thing to say, which is heavy metal drummer rails against American tax system.
There would be a headline for sure.
And Mike would say, "I'm off social media. That's it."
Okay, I'll jump in. Mike, you referred to this one for a second. I'm going to go with the White Album and Helter Skelter. A great metal song, as metal as this band ever got, and really early influence on metal. I mean, this song rocks, and how cool. I mean, McCartney basically just wrote this to prove he could, right? I mean, that was sort of, he heard a Who song and said, I can do that. And then, I mean, that's
Townsend said that I Could See for Miles. Townsend was bragging that it was like the heaviest, most gnarly song ever. And then Paul wrote this apparently in response to that.
I mean, such a competitive fire that drove them no matter what song, what they were working on. And it's great. And just his screaming and the energy behind it. And live, it just still kicks ass. I mean, that song is just awesome. It's been covered by so many people. From
Motley Crue to U2.
U2, yeah. And just a tremendous favorite that I always felt like I love the White Album, and it's maybe in my top 2 Beatles albums, but I always felt like they could have just, that song itself is missing from disc 1 for me, from the first album. It works there, and then that thing would be just perfect, because that's the one song I really, really love on the second LP.
No, it's funny that you think of it in terms of sides, or do you think of it in terms of CDs? Because I mean, I think of it in terms of sides. To me, the White Album is four albums.
No,
really.
Now it's sort of in my head as disc 1, disc 2, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
From a songwriting perspective, I often think about what it would be like if you heard somebody bring this, if somebody brought the song to a session with a band. And I think it's great that I love songs that have like one line or one phrase choruses. It's really hard to do. You wouldn't really know that, but if you try to write songs, and there's a lot of really great songs that are just like the chorus is just one line repeated over and over.
Yeah.
Like helter skelter, helter skelter. But then it comes to the end 3 times, helter skelter, and just, yeah. Right? I might, as a producer, I might have thought, hey, you want to add? You want to say
something else, maybe? Mix it up?
And what about in that very first verse? I don't know, forgive me because I'm not as musical as some of you guys, but that first verse where he kind of goes, tell me, come on, tell me the answer, which is totally, not, you would expect it not to go on that extra time, to go, what, I always wonder, was that just like a mistake that they left in, or did he intend to do that, or, it's lots of things like that.
Natural to me there, yeah. I don't know. I think they were just letting loose, right? It's got to be that he was just singing it and it just works.
Yeah. In his Little Richard kind of, screaming way. I find it interesting, the end fade, the way, because they already did it with Sgt. Pepper, with Strawberry Fields. Strawberry Fields had a fade out and then a fade back in. And then here they are doing it again in Helter Skelter, kind of Paul's response. But the mono version fades out and doesn't come back in. So the version that we know, is the stereo version where it comes out and comes back in. But the original mono version is really different. And it has the rubber ducky in the middle of the mono version right before the guitar solo. So this is one of those songs where the mix is distinctively different between the mono and the stereo versions. I think it's even a half step I think even the key is different on this between the mono and the stereo version.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, me neither.
Again, think of another band where there are books on websites about the differences between the mono and the stereo and the Capitol and the EMI. Like what other band in the world is that? And we talked about the Beatles and the Stones. Nobody cares about that stuff for the Rolling Stones.
Right.
For pretty much
Rolling
any
Stones
other band,
fans,
really. Yeah.
Yeah, I took Here, There, and Everywhere on this camping trip I was on for like a month, and I was reading it going, man, how many bands would I even care to know the real intimate details of how they recorded each song, But I mean, to me, it's always really interesting. I learn things.
Oh, there's some amazing recording the Beatles books and, the Beatles recording sessions. And yeah, it's fascinating. And it's unbelievable how, like, the amount of stuff that was done in only like 7 years. It's incredible.
It's
they were
really
literally
crazy.
in the studio every day. If they weren't playing live or making a movie or doing a TV show, they were in the studio literally every day is accounted for between like 62 to 69. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they couldn't after a while when they stopped touring, but that allowed for all of this stuff and the inventiveness, right? Had they been in today and being put on the road for 200 dates a year, who knows?
And I would like to point out that McCartney wanted them to all, they started pretty early in the day.
I don't know. I can't picture John being a morning guy. I don't know. Maybe.
No, yeah, you should say. And also, it's reported they recorded till 2 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Mike, you're number 2.
Well, finally, I give a little love to Paul, but he has to share it because it's a John and Paul combo, and it's almost sacrilegious for me to not put this at number 1, because to me it's probably the quintessential Beatles classic, and it's A Day in the Life. The closer of Sgt. Pepper. Really, you don't get more epic than that. But compositionally, it's half Paul, half John. John's is obviously the opening portion. I read the news today, and then they had the orchestra swell to lead to Paul's. Woke up, got out of bed, and then I've always wondered the bridge, I love that. But you would think that that's John singing, but I've read a lot of people questioning that it might actually be Paul. I don't know whose signature that connection is, but then it brings us back to John's part. And then of course the big orchestral climax at the end and the final chord. I mean, it was as epic as you get to close, the ultimate studio album of all time. And it was just, it's just such a perfect song. The drum fills from Ringo on the second verse are so tasty. And it just really has everything that made that era of the Beatles so great. And just to quickly say, I mean, looking at my list here, I have all John so far: In My Life, Dear Prudence, Happiness and Warm Gun, Day in the Life. And this isn't like designed that way. I really don't want to take any credit away from, the amazing songs that Paul and George contributed as well. And I almost feel guilty not having them on this list. But for some reason, when I made this list, I was just really and it's crazy that I think some of John's greatest songs aren't even on this list. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, Strawberry Fields. None of them are on my personal list yet so far.
Mr. Moonlight, don't forget Mr. Moonlight.
But anyway, A Day in the Life to me is.
I mean, I figure you were probably going to pick that one.
one.
That's who's going to argue with that? That's amazing.
And again, when you listen to the anthology version of that, and for the kind of the build up to the Paul bit. Well, when they recorded it, they had no idea what they were going to do, so they just left a big blank space and was it Mal Evans count the number of bars, and then they went away and went, right, what will we do here? They said, we'll get the instruments. They said start on your lowest note and go right up to your highest note in however many bars it was, and that became the thing. And just the creativity and having the resources to be able to just do that.
There's also the recordings of where they're just hitting the last note. Right, that piano over and over again, just trying to get that one thing right, that last thing. That's funny.
And it was also genius that Mal Evans is counting the bars, but then it ends with an alarm clock, which leads perfectly into Paul's lyric, woke up, got out of bed. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that was an accident?
Yeah, I think the alarm clock was placed there to mark the 24th bar or whatever it was, you know?
Yeah.
Really?
That's right, yeah.
Wow. I never knew that.
Hey.
See, I'm learning more stuff today.
We're learning stuff. Books. Yes.
More books.
Okay. All right. Neal, you're number 2?
Yeah, these aren't really in order, by the way. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but I thought I needed to put this category is late single. And I thought about the late singles, which are all great. I chose the single of Revolution. That version of Revolution is just like the late Beatles high energy thing. And I love the message. You know, when you talk about destruction, you can count me out, man. You know, we want to change things. We don't want to like go around destroying stuff. That's not the way. And right. I'm into the message, and I'm into that track. And I just think from beginning to end, it's just killer.
That's an anthem.
Absolutely. I say a funny thing about Revolution. I've probably heard that song maybe 5,000 times in my lifetime, maybe more. I don't know. It wasn't until about last year that I realized that opening guitar thing is actually in triplets. I always, the first 10,000 times I heard this song, thought it was, I thought it was 16th notes. I never realized it was. So it was a weird revelation I had recently where I actually felt the intro for what it was.
Why? Maybe somebody knows, but why is that tone so weird and cool and the scream so weird and cool? It sounds like it's like, they're overdriving the board or something. It's not normal.
I think it is something like that. Yeah. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
It's not really, early days of distortion, right? I mean, they were just sort of, that wasn't that common, I guess, maybe. But it sounds great.
Yeah. And do you guys know, like, the story of the different revolutions? Like, they originally recorded Revolution 1, which was the more bluesy thing, and then they did the Revolution, the single as we know it. But then they jammed on, they did, if you have the White Album box set, they do a jam of Revolution, which was take 18. It was Revolution 1, but it was the 18th take, and that's where all the Revolution 9 stuff came from. A lot of the outtakes and the sound effects and things that got cut up and put into Revolution 9 came from an extended jam of the original Revolution 1. So anyway, there's a little history there between the three revolutions that they put out.
I'm sure Geoff knew that.
Well, I learned that.
Cool facts.
Yeah, I learned that on the Deconstructing the White Album thing.
Yeah, great series.
Yeah. Those are brilliant. Yeah, those are really good.
Yeah. All right, Geoff, you're number 2.
Number 2, it's already been done, and sometimes in these podcasts I change when stuff's already been done, but I'm not going to because my number 2 was In My Life as well. I love Rubber Soul, UK version. It's such an amazing, complete album. We've talked about In My Life already, and the things that I'd scribbled down, Lennon said about it, it was my first piece of work where the words were more than just a sound, and I think maybe he even wrote it as a poem originally, maybe. There's another brilliant thing that I was reading about it where, McCartney said, I wrote the melody for that on a Mellotron. And then Lennon's been quoted as saying, no, he didn't. He just added a few bits into what I'd written, So the joy of that collaboration. But what a brilliant song. And again, one of those songs that, it could be done and performed with an orchestra. It could be done and performed with an acoustic guitar. This is one of the other things, just we haven't really talked about it, but obviously the Beatles catalog is, it must be one of the most covered catalogs ever.
All right, so I'll jump in. My number 2 also was said before, and also by Mike. I'm going to go Dear Prudence for my number 2. Just always been a long time favorite, and we talked about it. I think all the all the different parts in it are just standouts to me. Paul's bass, the lyrics, the different sections, the building guitar thing at the end. Just I think it's outstanding. It's as good a thing as there is on that album. So I got 2 from the White Album back to back.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm going with that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I love. I'll just make one little comment about Dear Prudence again.
Yeah.
It was something we didn't mention was how cool the alternate guitar leads are. The parts are so cool. That dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun.
I love that part.
It's
Is
a great part
so great.
in the last
and
verse.
Paul's doing his fills, and it's just so cool.
And there's that weird keyboard thing going on. That's really weird. There's some really unusual keyboard things on that album. Like that weird, like on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, there's that weird organ that's going.
I always felt like, particularly with the White Album, that's one album that sonically sounds the most current to me.
I think Abbey Road to me is their most modern sounding production. I think that set the template for what 70s produced albums would sound like.
Yeah,
White Album to me was a lot more stripped down. I mean, after they came out of Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour with Walrus and Lucy and all the psychedelic stuff.
Right.
White Album was just like not even a year later, pulled it all away and
right. But you could come out now with that, like with back in USSR type sound. Just guitars and drums and. You
got to realize those songs, most of the songs on the White Album were written just on acoustic guitars when they were in India. So I think it felt so much more stripped down, but also very detached. It was almost like for solo recording artists, with the White Album. They sounded very detached to my ears, at least.
And also cool is really, I mean, they kept breaking ground with even just the packaging of that, at that time, just the White Album and all the pictures that came with it and the whole, everything they did during that period was just like, this wasn't done before. This wasn't done before. This wasn't done before. So just awesome. Okay. Well, the big number ones, let's see, Mike, number 1.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little here. And I think I'm allowed to. I'm going to go with the Abbey Road Side 2 medley. And I think I'm allowed to count it as
funny
one
because
song.
You'll see, but yeah.
Okay. And I think I'm allowed to count it as one song because they put out the 50th anniversary version and there's a version on there. They call it the long one.
Yeah.
As one 16-minute song. So being that the fact that there's a version of that was released starting from You Never Give Me Your Money to the end of the end. I guess being they released it as one song on the anniversary, I can count it as one song. So that would be my number 1 pick because it's got everything in it. And Neal and I have covered it twice. We covered it with Yellow Matter Custard, and then we also covered it with Transatlantic, interspersed throughout Sweet Charlotte Pike. But to me, it's got a little bit of everything, and I feel good. I can get some Paul in here because she came it through the bathroom window, and You Never Give Me Your Money, and obviously Golden Slumbers. All that stuff is so Paul. But then you got the Mean Mr. Mustard, and Polythene Pam, which was more Paul. But no, that's John. What am I saying?
John.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, it just has a little bit of everything in there, and then ending with Ringo's drum solo in the end, and then the 3 guys trading off the guitar leads, and then climaxing with them singing the end and the big orchestral swell. I mean, how do you get more of a better finale than that? And
agreed.
So I mean, I'm going to cheat and call that as a single song, and that would be my number 1.
Do you have a favorite moment from that though? If you had to choose a break up part from it, like, is there? I
mean, like I said, there's so many great bits. The Golden Slumbers is amazing.
Yeah.
I love Attic Polly's gonna send what is all of all nowhere to go. What is that? All
You Never Give Me Your Money.
You Never Give Me Your Money. I love all that.
I always thought it was weird on CD though. I understand breaking up some of them, like You Never Give Me Your Money sort of could be its own song. Sun King can be its own song a little bit. Breaking up the end into its own song was always just like silly.
Yeah.
That was Golden Slumbers Carry That Way. The end should have been one track always, right?
And
Because
it's
you're never
weird
going to
that
hear them separate.
it's weird that Because isn't part of this. Because if you listen to side 2 of Abbey Road, it starts with Here Comes the Sun.
Right.
Then you have Because, and then begins, you know, You Never Give Me Your Money and Sun King and all that stuff. But also talking about favorite parts, I love the bridge on You Never Give Me Your Money. The and oh, that magic feeling, nowhere to go. And then the big the 3-part ahs and everything, which sounds so much kind of like Because. It's almost a very similar kind of 3-part like block as they did with Because. But yeah.
And I kind of like the Her Majesty bit thrown in the middle there. It actually it does work if they had chosen to do it.
Well, we did that. You guys probably know. We put Her Majesty back into it when Yellow Matter Custard did it. But at that time, not a lot of people knew that it originally was part of the medley. And I think when Yellow Matter Custard did it, you know, we got to the end of Mean Mr. Mustard, and then we did Her Majesty, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're not going to finish the side?" And then we come up with Polythene Pam, and you know, kicked back in. And I like that they put it back in on the 50th anniversary, you know, version with the long ones. Yeah. But that was really cool.
No, it's very cool to hear that.
The backstory.
All right, we'll let it slide.
A lot of those were, you know, it was the leftovers from the Let It Be sessions. It was the songs where they had a verse and a chorus and nothing else that they did with it, and they, you know, they brought it all together into something that was incredible. You know,
and I was reading that like the reviews were bad, right, when that album came out. It got sort of like ripped by a lot of people. That it had no direction or different things that I read, and imagine it's crazy. All right, Neal, what's your number one?
Well, I had the exact same thing as my number one.
Let's see how many of us have it.
But I thought that I was going to get busted. I thought Mike was going to bust me. Say, no, you can't do that, man. Mike's a purist. So I'm surprised, but I didn't know that it was released as one thing. It is kind of like the first for me, that's the first real proggy thing that I experienced as a youngster. And so I always were like that. So I did not actually, I have Sick Inside of Abbey Road, ? And because this is my category, late LP cut, you know, the later period in LP cut. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know, I need to pick Blackbird. Something simple. You know, McCartney, I've played Blackbird so many times for my kids. My kids know how to play Blackbird's been a real part of my life, you know, in a special way. Yeah. I used to sing it to my kids when they were crying, and then I did it once. It worked once. I kept trying.
So Blackbird's going to be your number one?
Well, I mean, I wasn't thinking of it in terms of numbers, really. But so I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say an interesting thing about Blackbird, more a commentary on Paul. How many Beatles songs are just Paul? Like Blackbird is just Paul. Yesterday is just Paul. Eleanor Rigby is just Paul. And I will. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of amazing how many songs and yet it's credited to Lennon and McCartney. And I don't know if you guys know, but when he put out Wings Over America, he switched the credit because Blackbird and Yesterday are both on Wings Over America. He switched the credit to McCartney. He's
done that on a lot of subsequent live albums.
But Yoko put the kibosh on it.
Yeah.
And he had to change it back.
Yeah.
And on the early albums, I Saw Her Standing There was also credited as McCartney Lennon, if you look up that one.
Really?
Yeah, indeed.
All right,
Jeff, another interesting category. There's two other categories we could have done: animal songs and girls' names. Think of all the girls' names: Rita, Martha, Lucy, Prudence, Michelle. I mean, there's probably a list of at least 20 or 30 songs.
Rita.
Yeah, it's amazing how many girl songs. Pam, Julia. Yeah.
Julia. Yeah. That's funny. Geoff, all right, we're going 3 for 3 on this? Or?
No. My number one, I'm amazed nobody's mentioned it, but like everything, you know, so many choices. It's going to be Strawberry Fields Forever. Again, you know, a brilliant story. And you probably know the making of this, they had a whole number of different versions, and he recorded it one way. He decided he didn't like it that way. They re-recorded it, but it was a slightly different key and it was a slightly different speed. But then they decided they liked the first half from one bit and the second half from another bit. They very speeded it and found that actually the tempo difference and the key difference exactly fitted. And you know, production wise, it's brilliant. And you know, the mellotron, you've got Harrison playing that, the Swarm Mandela, I think it's called. They talk about it a lot in those deconstructing videos. And just, you know, the whole thing of the Liverpool theme, the vision of a child, you know, someone who doesn't fit in, and this kind of isolation within the theme of everything that was going on. You know, there's just so much, you know, a recorded masterpiece, really. You know,
another groundbreaking
none of you guys will disagree.
studio achievement by them at that time. I mean,
that was really the first Pepper track. That was the first
Yeah.
song they recorded during the Pepper sessions, and it really set the tone of what was to come. And I'm glad it's on this list, because to me, Lennon was, there's so much Lennon in my list, but I didn't mention the big psychedelic ones like Strawberry Fields, I Am the Walrus, Mr. Kite, Lucy. That era for Lennon, Tomorrow Never Knows. Like every one of them was a sonic masterpiece. But Strawberry Fields Forever in particular really set the tone, and it just kind of wrote a whole new rule book of what you could do in the studio.
Okay, so my number one has always been from Abbey Road, Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight into the End. It's just always my favorite. And then recently, like Mike said, when they came out with that box set and they released that long one, I was like, oh, this actually, it was always one sort of thing anyway. And so I don't know, I'm sort of in between. If forced to pick one part, it would be the ending section, but the whole side B medley it's just the greatest thing ever made.
You know,
that's what I'll say about it.
You know, Roy, the only thing that's missing is every once in a while it needs to stop and a guy needs to make an announcement. There's
What are you talking about?
guy needs to make an announcement. We'll be having trivia in the Schooner Lounge.
Is that what was happening when we played it with Transatlantic on Cruise to the Edge?
Thank God, Mike had his ears in and he didn't know what was happening on the cruise ship.
Oh, it happened a lot out by the pool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they apparently by law they couldn't turn it off. Because I begged them. During Casey's set, it was like.
Oh, did you watch him in the morning? He did it in the morning where he did an acoustic thing, and it was in the middle of every song. There was some announcement. It was just brutal.
Be getting in the vibe, and then like. If anybody ordered a double chubby chuck.
So forever, that when you listen to Abbey Road medley, you're going to now picture the Cruise to the Edge announcements.
Yeah.
Ruined it for you.
Glad. If you would have known, Mike, what was happening, I think there would have been literal steam.
I had no idea. But that was already tough enough when we were playing that set, because that set started like an hour and a half late as it was. And
I know very well. Lots of comical things happened.
When you did the Abbey Road stuff with Transatlantic blended in with Sweet Charlotte Pike, didn't you also do Mike did a Yoko Ono section in the middle, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the middle of that, right when you were doing the Sweet Charlotte Pike thing, because it was running late, I had to go announce, I think it was Riverside at the theater, which is all the way on the other side bottom of the ship. So in the middle of it, I'm like, finish the song, and I'm like, all right, I'll be right back. I ran, I got up there, and they're like, oh no, it's okay, you don't need to do it. I'm like, okay, and I ran back, and I made it to the end of that song, and then watched the rest of the thing. But that's my life on the ship because of introducing bands. It's like running like a madman back and forth.
Me and Neil can relate because that's what we're usually doing with the performances as well.
Yeah.
But for people people probably know that Sweet Charlotte Pike, the reason we intertwined it with Transatlantic, because Sweet Charlotte Pike was kind of written in the same way that they did side 2 of Abbey Road. We had a lot of bits and pieces, And we decided, let's do an Abbey Road and let's, kind of make one piece out of all these little pieces. And then even the song title, Charlotte Pike, was the name of the street where the studio we recorded the Transatlantic Bridge Across Forever album on. So you could actually, if you're driving throughout Franklin, Tennessee, you could see the Charlotte Pike exit. But that's how we got the name Sweet Charlotte Pike. It was kind of even, a tribute to the Abbey Road side too.
Well, I'll tell you a story that Mike probably doesn't know. That is the very first words, Mike, that you spoke to me were related to Abbey Road. Huh. Which was on the day of the Transatlantic, the World Tour in Shepherd's Bush, and I was meeting Neil, and I walked past you, and you just I was wearing an Abbey Road shirt, and you pointed at my shirt and went, "It's very interesting. You should be wearing that shirt." And then kept walking. and I said to Neil later on, "Oh, Mike walked past me," and he just stopped and pointed at my shirt and said, "It's very interesting. You should be wearing that shirt," and walked on. And do you remember why it was very interesting I was wearing that shirt?
Was this on the Whirlwind tour or the
Whirlwind tour? Yeah, the Whirlwind tour.
If it would have been the Bridge Across Forever tour, that would have made sense because we were doing it during Sweet Charlotte Pike. But I don't know why I would have said that during Whirlwind.
I think Neil said, I think you said to me, Neil, that you had hoped on that day in London to get to Abbey Road to kind of recreate the cover for the live album. But ran out of time. So there you go.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
that's
listen.
Funny.
This was a lot of fun.
I need to clarify something because it's going to make me nuts if I don't correct it.
Okay.
I mentioned Helter Skelter being a half step out earlier on the mono version. I think I'm wrong. I think it was Don't Pass Me By. So I just wanted to get that out there for the purists that are going to blast me in the comments.
Well, so the person that just typed that in the comments is now erasing.
I can see the headlines, Mike. Heavy metal drummer rails against the Beatles.
So-called Beatles expert.
Right.
Self-proclaimed.
And I assume everybody out there has seen mine and Neil's Beatles Name That Tune together. But if you haven't, you got to look that up on YouTube.
Please
the one you did with Melody too, which was man, I can't believe how good she did. I was trying to forget that one. Melody killed me. She wiped the floor with me.
Yeah, what in the world?
Yeah.
That was unexpected. It was.
The Portnoy synapses. See, it's not that you don't know the song. It's just that the time from the thought to the mouth.
That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game.
Man.
Yeah.
Melody. Whoa.
I want a rematch.
Guys, thank you so much. This was always fun. It's always great to talk to you and laugh, and especially to do the Beatles thing. I mean, this is awesome. This is so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man.
And Geoff, you too, man. Geoff, you too.
But I gotta say, I feel really like George was completely underrepresented.
I know. Well, no.
We had Taxman. I mean,
Taxman.
We had Taxman, but
right.
what about something? What about While My Guitar Gently Weeps? It's almost it's impossible to do this list without like leaving out so many classics. I'm sorry, George.
He's with us in spirit.
We love George. We love Ringo. Yeah, who knows? I mean, like we could do this 10 different times and come up with 10 different lists. And,
yeah, sure. We could have a favorite song of each guy.
Right. No, categories maybe. That sometimes we do. You know what? We could have done the four of us each picking one member. That would have been another way to do it.
Well, the solo albums. I mean, I just listened to Tim Heidecker. Favorite comedian of mine, just did a podcast going through each album and then did the solo years as well. I was honored to be able to do one of them with him, but they also did the solo years. It was a great listen. So if you're a Beatles fan out there, definitely worth checking out. It's been keeping me company during the quarantine. But yeah, there's so much great Beatles conversations out there, and I'm just glad we were able to have one here with ourselves as well.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, congrats on all the records. Don't forget, you have Sola Gratia coming out. The Mike Portnoy with John Petrucci coming out. You got Flying Colors Live, Morsefest, Cover to Cover has been out. And, 6 more albums before December probably on the way. All right, so good night, everybody. We'll see you later.
Right.
Good night, guys.
Now it's time to say good night. Goodbye. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Peace and love.